So, welcome back everybody, and this is going to be a part 2 of the guide to Warleading. And we're going to talk about just specific tanks and what uses they have in Clan Wars. And only in Clan Wars. It's not a tank comparison or something like that for randoms. I'm going to focus only on Clan Wars and as well skirmishes and stuff like that. 15 versus 15 tier 10 play. And I'm going to focus in this video on heavies or tanks that act like heavies. So some TDs act like heavies, and some heavies, for example the 50B. The 50B is not a heavy in the sense of this video, and I'll go into it when I go into maybe snipers or autoloaders in general. We'll see how I do that. Okay, so I'm gonna go through tanks real quick and just say what good, what bad, what useless, to kind of make that clear. Jack Panzer useless, Mouse useless, E100. Oh, Jack Panzer mostly useless. E100. One of the best, if not the best tank for small city maps and straightforward city maps, any alley brawl. It really, as long as you've got people who know how to aim with heat and shooting heat, it is incredibly good. First of all, with 3 or 4 E100, with 4 E100s you one-shot any tank. With 3, however, you already one-shot a lot of heavies. Be it the I7 and the E5, the T57, the 50B, counting it now. So 113 just being on the borderline, as well as every single medium gets 3 shot by 1 E100 or 1 shot by 3 E100s. That's extremely powerful if you think about it. Additionally, you just have way too much armor and way too much HP. Obviously it's really slow, but I even use E100 sometimes on a map like El Haluf in very small numbers, and like I'll use like maybe 2 or 3 or 1. But they're very good at just standing there blocking, and for example you put 3 behind the corner and then you put some snipers like in the far back, which can like don't only support the 100s, right? You have snipers doing like sniping all over the place, and if the 100s get pushed, first of all there's 3 of them, so they one shot the first guy coming around the corner, and then you have snipers behind just tearing them down while they take forever trying to kill the 100s on the front line. Then if we go have a look at the Russian tanks, we have the IS-4, which is a weird tank. It's not very used. Most people would probably say it's useless, or some people at least. I would definitely agree. I really like using it in like specific situations. It has one big advantage over the 100, which is size. It's way smaller, which makes it way easier to fit a bunch of them into a corridor. And on many maps, like for example on Abbey or in Ensk, it quickly becomes an issue of size and being able to just stack tanks. So if you have like 5 IS-4s in the same area where enemy can only fit like 3 E100s, you just have more guns shooting at them. It has extremely good armor, especially since the armor is really tricky. Like there's no like correct against an E100. As soon as you load heat, you're gonna pin every shot if you know how to aim. If you really know how to aim, at least if we're talking top clans. Below that is definitely not the case, sadly. IS-4 can be very tricky to penetrate, especially if they're standing next to each other. In a kind of a scaffold line, or if they're hold down or side scraping, and even reverse side scraping. Reverse side scraping, IS-4 is also very strong, and again, hold down. It has the advantage of having a more accurate and more fast firing and so on gun than the IS-7. So for kind of long range hold down, it's better than the IS-7, even if the IS-7 turret is slightly better. IS-7 used to be the king of rushing forwards and being hold down. However, the speed got nerfed, and then the 113 came. It's still very good at that though. The turret is still extremely good. And it's still definitely one of the good tanks out there, but it suffers from very low health pool. IS-4 doesn't get 3 shot by E100s and other 750 alpha guns. IS-7 does, which is a huge issue. And the whole armor generally isn't that good as well. But IS-7 is one of those tanks which can be used basically if you want to get a position fast, or if hold down fighting really matters. And gun depression doesn't. Obviously, both of these having bad gun depression. Then you have the E5, which used to be like, and now is really good since it got its armor buff, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, right? It's definitely one of the best tanks out there just because it's extremely polyvalent. It's kind of fast, it's kind of snipey, it's got kind of good DPM, it's got kind of good armor, it's got kind of good turret armor, it's got good gun depression. But it's not excellent at anything. You can hold down fight, but not against I7s, unless there's really like huge hills so that the gun depression really matters. But like, hold down I7 against a hold down E5, or hold down IS-4 even against a hold down E5. And even like E100 against hold down E5, just because E100 has like the alpha advantage, as long as he hits one out of those 2 shots time to time, like it's just gonna 3-shot, like, you know. You hit from time to time only that E5 cupola with heat and pen, but every time you do, you take off a third of the health of the E5, so 3 times you manage to hit the cupola and the E5 is just dead. Or the E5 used to hit the E100, I don't even know, 7 times, right? And pen each other. So E5 is definitely like, if you don't know what to take, taking an E5 is definitely one of the best options. But it has its limitations. I'm also going to talk about the T57 because even though it's an autoloader, it definitely belongs into the heavy group to some degree for me. Because it's just as slow, or even a bit slower than an E5. It's basically as fast as an IS-4 and so on. It actually has decent-ish armor, although it shouldn't be used as a standalone heavy on the front line, right? But it can be used to push forwards with other heavies, and it will bounce more than a 50B and so on. Especially in like weird brawly fights where it gets very mixed up, and you have wrecks and guns and tanks all over the place, the weird angles, and people just don't aim well. Like really, people just don't aim well in organized play. I don't know why, but people don't aim well. And why I keep yelling at them to aim. But yeah, the weird angles of the T57 armor just lead for a surprising amount of bounces. And the DPM of the T57 is just able to tear through completely anything, which is really insane. The E4 also can act basically like a heavy in a certain way, and is another, it's basically like a worse E100 with more pen. I normally doesn't have much use. It has one advantage, that it's smaller, so kind of like the IS-4. It can be used as a E100 when you need more space, or when you need more sniping. Also, like the ability to also snipe, but also have this alpha. And yeah, it can be useful for like the super high pen stuff. Obviously the E3 can also be used in the form of a heavy, can be used in the form of a TD, not going to talk about that here. But in the form of a heavy, of just putting it hold down somewhere in, you know, Himmelsdorf 8 line or something, you put 2 E3s. And then, like, for example, if you want to cover Himmelsdorf 8 line like easily, you put 1 E3 maybe even, and 2 T57s just hiding behind, so that in case E3 gets rushed, you have 2 57s going out and clipping the first 2 guys and killing the first and only killing the second, you know, with the E3 also shooting twice, kill 2 guys basically in 4 seconds. Or 6 seconds. That's a really powerful combination. So yeah, E3 very powerful in the sense of, you know, extreme frontal armor and high alpha and high pen. Like the high pen really, really matters in Clan Wars for penning things like the IS-7. You can pen an IS-7 turret with E3 APCR. Yeah, it's that strong. And same for E4. So that's kind of an advantage of those tanks. But otherwise, not much used. E3 more than the others, but mostly singularly. T57 in my eyes kind of underused really. Yes, 50B is better in many situations, but in some situations the T57 just excels, and if you combine it with, like, for example, IS-4s, which are very tanky, you can push in with the IS-4s and they take the damage and can kind of focus out the lowlights and whatever, and then the T57 just come in and tear absolutely every single part. French don't really have a heavy in that sense. 155 being just completely useless, and the 50B not being heavy for the terms of this video. The British have the 183, which I think currently isn't much used. I don't really like it. There are some very specific situations where you want one, but I'll go there maybe to that when I get to that, not right now. And then you have the 215B, which is very, very good, but again has a bunch of weaknesses. It excels at having an insanely huge gun. Like the 215B has the best gun in the game, really, or definitely the best gun on any heavy. The accuracy is insane, the DPM is insane. The penetration is insane, it's got APCRs, gold, the accuracy in the move is insane, the gun depression is decent. However, you got that rear mounted turret, you're slow, and so on. But the turret is also pretty good. And the whole armor isn't actually quite that bad when angled. Like, you get a bunch of bounces off the upper plate, even with gold, when it's angled. So what can it be used for? If you want something kind of flexible, it's good. If you want hold down fighting, it can't hold down fight against an i7 or whatever, but against an e5 it can actually do that pretty well. And especially against mediums, it's definitely able to do that. And mainly like mid-range sniping, DPMing, like, or just straight up pushing in. Because the 215B has the benefit of actually having 2500 HP. If you get maps where you don't take much damage going forwards, or you're just mainly waiting for the enemy or something. But for example, let's say on Ensk, right? You assume that you're just gonna get penned every shot in your 215B, but you're gonna pen every shot in your 215B. And you have more DPM and the same HP as the enemy, or very similar, or sometimes even more. You're just gonna tear them apart if you have a bunch of them. So it's definitely not the easiest tank to use. You definitely need good players because actually pinning their shots really matters. If they start bouncing, then the 215E becomes very quickly bad, unless it comes down to just sniping. But in a brawl, but can definitely be used for hold down work and stuff like that. Hold down sniping, hold down kind of more flexibility. Then an i7, which is if you put it hold down somewhere, sure, it's like not gonna get penned, but an i7 hold down will not penetrate much, which is hold down either, yeah, at mid to long ranges. So that's kind of that. Then the Russians have the Chinese, I mean, sorry, have the 113, which is really one of the best tanks. Again, like the E5, it's one of the most used tanks at the moment. Because it's extremely fast, the frontal armor is extremely good, the frontal turret armor is extremely good, and the gun is very good. Which allows it to be, yeah, very fast, go in aggressively, take down mediums. It's very good at chasing mediums and taking them down. That's basically its biggest advantage, is that mediums can't really run away, yet you just absolutely murder mediums with 113s in a straight up brawl. The sidearm is really bad, so it's important to hide it, so you want to make sure that you're not using it in the same way of like an IS-4 and E100, just kind of sitting somewhere taking damage from all sides. The 113 really wants to be facing forward, going forward into fights, or if you're getting shot into the side, then you have to have at least even numbers and count on like, well, being the one having kind of a surroundment, having more HP than mediums, and just, you know, out HP alphaing them and just taking them down quickly. Because you will take damage, but you can't take some. No. Just take an E100, please. No heavies here. And as for the Swedish Kranwagen, first of all, I don't even really know what it's good for, because I haven't been playing since I got introduced that much. I haven't actually really looked at stats or played it on test server or played it on any account yet, and haven't grinded it myself. But since it's an order, I'm not going to go into it in the server of this video. So, to kind of make a summary of all these tanks we kind of saw. Oh wait, one more thing maybe. If we go back to the Russian TDs, the 263 can also be used in this form of a heavy, or of a semi-heavy. It can be used as a sniper, can be very good at that. But you can use it kind of in combination with like i7, 113, that kind of group, or even with mediums, because it's got very good strong frontal armor. It's decently fast, faster than most heavies. It's basically as fast as an 113, and has extremely high DPN and a very good gun. Although obviously only frontal bearing, no gun depression and so on. But in a street fight, having a couple 263s linger behind, you don't want too many, but instead of T57 you can sometimes use 263s, and have them support your heavy group with the extremely high DPM and the sniping also at long range and hold down stuff and so on, like the covering fire. And yeah, you can't use them on their own though, because they do need support most of the time, unless it's really just a straight up alley, but then an E3 is better against, you know, flanking enemies and so on. But definitely very powerful. So to kind of summarize, it really depends on the map, and I'm still going to go into analyzing maps and so on. There's just so much to talk about when talking about war leading. I have to start somewhere, and I need to make this into short videos, because otherwise people run away and I get bored. But yeah, for heavies, for hold down fighting, you want an i7 or an E3 in small maps at short range, or an IS4, or an E5, or a 113. Depending on the situation. E5 has the advantage of having more gun depression, 113 has speed and a good gun, IS7 has speed, a very good turret but a shitty gun, IS4 has no speed, a very good turret, although not quite as good as the IS7. The IS4 turret really is extremely good, and a pretty good gun, and I hope I didn't forget one. And the 215B also can have a very good gun, and can be very good at hold down fighting if it's used well, which is why it's used so much in ESL. As long as you have people who have the caliber who are actually able to hit and pen a E5 cupola every time at medium range, which is possible, and to know where to pen certain things like a 113 turret and an enemy 215B turret, E5 turret even in the not cupola, things like that, then you are golden with a 215B. For just pure pushing, i7 not good. Like for pure city brawling, not taking into account hold down fighting, just brawling, i7 is really trash. E5 is okay, but actually not that good if people know how to pen it. IS4 is in my eyes undervalued. 215B can be very excellent, but has huge limitations. Like it's very special tank. I personally really like it, but it's a very special tank, and you have to really think about when you want to use it. E100 is just the king of brawling. T57 and 263 are great at supporting roles. And I hope I'm not forgetting any now. The 113 is definitely one of the best there again too. The 113 cannot roll with E100s frontally or that kind of stuff, like they will get murdered in that situation at short range. But against, for example, E5, they're definitely able to cope, and they're better than anything nearly against mediums, which makes them very powerful. And E3 extremely strong at rolling, especially at medium to long ranges actually. And when Hoda. Medium to long ranges, because then the lower plate just becomes nearly not hittable, not penetrable. And the E3 just still tears through everything with its APCR pen, which is really powerful. And the E4 can also be very good actually in like the rare situations where it's peekaboo, because you can just peekaboo with APCR, you hit something, you pen, you do 750 damage, whatever happens, and even if most of the time you take 400 back because your armor is crap, and even if you're limited to 2000 HP, compared to like 2500 of other heavies, as long as you're trading 750 for 400 every time and you have the time to reload, so let's say you're like just kind of peekabooming on Anks, you're not rushing for it, right? And you have a good setup where they can't just rush into you quickly. And you can get like 2 free shots if they try to do that. E4s can be very good and can be better than E100 just because they can pin those side scraping shots on enemies every time and so on, so on, so on. Especially E100, like with heat, you can pen nearly everything, but you really know how to aim. And not everyone knows how to pin a side scraping E5 with an E100 at like medium range and stuff like that. And sometimes you just can't anymore also. So that's when E4 can get very interesting, actually. I hope this video was useful, and yeah, see you next time for the next one.